In today's Talk Story segment, Governor Neil Abercrombie, speaking to a room full of Democrats during the annual convention in Volcano, runs down the state of politics in America, particularly the recent allegations against President Barack Obama on Capitol Hill.
If we think we get hit with VOG here on the Big Island, the smog that's hitting Washington right now is something that in my experience, certainly over the 10 terms I was in the Congress of the United States, never, ever have I seen the depth of depravity, political depravity that exists there in Washington now. I came into elected office in 1974 in the wake of the Watergate tragedy, and I call it a tragedy because there was a fundamental assault on the basic constitutional principles that we live by in this nation. It was done by the President of the United States and those associated with him. 25 of those individuals ended up in prison and the President resigned. Now, the difference is that the assault on the Constitution is being done to the President of the United States by the very forces that posit themselves as defenders of freedom and democracy in this country. I had the very unfortunate, and perhaps some of you had the same experience within the last couple of days, of having a member of the United States House of Representatives denounce the President as a tyrannical despot. A tyrannical despot. But I'm also aware of the fact that the President and the Democratic Party has tried again and again to reach out and say, all right, whatever differences we have, let's try and work them out as best we can, and let's let majority rule, and let's try to move on from that point. The President we can't even get majority rule. Why is there a struggle going on in the United States Senate right now? Over and over again, we have a majority of votes. We even have a majority now in the United States Senate of 55 senators. But no, through procedures, it's got to get to be 60. It's got to be, and we have what so-called filibusters today. They're not filibusters. What they are is an obvious attempt to try and drag out and destroy the possibility of a consensus ever being reached or a majority being able to act. I'm not saying the majority is always right. I've been plenty of times on the end of a losing vote, sometimes only a single vote. I've been in the legislature where I've lost by 70 plus to 1. I've been in the United States Congress where I lost 400 and something to 1. Can you imagine 400 plus people so blindly wrong? You take what's happening right now with the so-called Tea Party, all this outrage that's out there about the so-called Tea Parties. Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter whether you're a conservative organization or a progressive organization or what you have. When you apply for tax-exempt status, the condition that they're applying for tax-exempt status has as that you're supposed to be a social welfare organization. You're supposed to be reaching out to make life better for people. No, you can disagree with what constitutes making it better for people. You know, whether you're going to argue, no matter what you're going to argue about, whatever the social issue is, whatever the particular item of approach. But these are political organizations meant to support candidates and to support issues, which they can do as well, but they're not tax exempt. No, and they shouldn't be. But you see everybody jumping on this, oh, this is terrible. No, those folks, those public servants were doing their duty. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, dozens of these organizations start appearing, all asking for tax exempt. They're supposed to be examined for that to see whether it's on the level or not. Correct. And what we have is backing down in the face of it. No. That's where this tyrannical despot business comes from. They see this as an opportunity to drive a wedge in there and to make it political. Take Benghazi. Thomas Pickering, one of the most honored diplomats in modern American history, who headed up the post-Benghazi investigation. You think anybody's happy with that? People died in the service of the United States, just as much as if they were in the military right now and on a mission. And they're trying to turn that kind of a tragedy into something because talking points between two different branches of government were at odds with one another, as if that's some kind of conspiracy and cover-up associated with the ideas and the actions that were taken with Watergate. Deliberate criminal break-ins to see if people reputations could be destroyed or worse in terms of criminal charges. To take the question of the press and the leaks. Who called for the investigation of the leaks that led to CIA operatives in places like Yemen being exposed so that they were killed? Or could be, or exposed all over. That's what this leaks investigation is all about. It was the Republicans. And the Congress called for these investigations. What we're talking about is the AP. Did somebody, were there some phone calls that were made that might have been involved in people leaking information with respect to what took place in Yemen and a CIA operation to try to prevent the blowing up of a plane? No, if you had your wife or your husband or a member of your family or somebody in the community on that plane, I suspect that you would want every kind of vigorous intervention by the United States to prevent that from happening. It's a new world out there. But what's happening is there's not a dialogue about what are the proper boundaries that need to be established. The argument is, let's see what we can do to tear the president apart and bring the government down. That's what's taking place. They have no intention of arriving at a dialogue to determine what's the proper exercise of governmental authority for a free people here in the United States, but rather how can we use this to demagogue the situation, to turn this into a McCarthy-esque accusation, prosecution, conviction, and sentencing. Now, what I'm calling for, and what I hope we're going to take out of our meeting today, and I hope Democrats all across the country are going to start doing it. I think we need a little bit more Harry Truman in this country. I think when somebody said, "Give him hell, Harry," he said, "I am giving him hell." I'm telling the truth and they think it's hell. We've got to go on offense. I don't want to see us defending anything. I want us on offense. I want us talking about what we're going to do for and with the country. I want us to get out in front on these issues. Of course they're serious. The defensive personnel that are out there across the world in the State Department representing us in chaotic situations and political situations that are virtually dysfunctional, of course, their literal lives are on the line. It's not an abstraction. It's not an academic discussion. We've seen it in Benghazi and elsewhere. Of course, that's serious business, and it needs to be discussed in a serious way. What can we do together as a nation? And so what I think is taking place right now is a fundamental test of the Democratic Party in this nation. I'm hoping that the president will go to the country as we move towards 2014 and say, give me a Congress that's going to restore the Constitution to its proper function and allow us to act on behalf of the entire people of the United States.
We will have more from the governor this week on Big Island Video News, including comments made about his re-election campaign and the failure of the minimum wage increase bill to pass the state legislature.
We can't have a rational discussion on immigration.